So I'm giving you a scene from All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. And this scene appears on pages 188 through 190 of the novel, about 35% of the way through the story. You don't need a whole lot of context here to make sense of the scene, but of course if you've read the novel, you understand that there's a lot of momentum behind the relationship depicted in this scene between Marie-Laure and her father. But take a look at the scene itself. It's 705 words, by the way, and we're going to use this as our exemplar because this scene is very successful. There's a lot to talk about here. I just want to highlight a few takeaways for you, so follow along. First of all, this scene is a mini story. That is, it has a character, Papa, with a desire, facing a conflict and taking action. Character, desire, conflict, and action are the essentials, the non-negotiables of a story, and those elements should be in every scene of your story. Now in this scene there's some major internal conflict. Papa wants to go to Paris, or at least he feels he should, but he doesn't want to be apart from his daughter. You don't need internal conflict like this in every scene, but you should have it at some points in your story. But let's look at the more subtle artistry of this scene, the stuff that really makes it resonate with readers. And we'll begin with dialogue. There's not much of it here, but what dialogue there is works very well. It's got subtext and misalignment. Subtext just means more is going on under the surface than on it, as Francine Prose says. One mark of bad written dialogue is that it's only doing one thing at most at once. This dialogue is overflowing with subtextual character desire, and that's the key to subtext. It's born from the character's wanting. So in this scene, the subtext is, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, I being Papa. But of course, he doesn't say that to her. He's not telling her about the betrayal he feels. Her subtext is basically, what am I going to do without you? A big part of the reason this dialogue works so well is that their subtextual desires are at odds. Let's isolate the dialogue here. This is the entirety of the conversation they have. Use as much soap as you like, he says. I bought extra. You're leaving, aren't you? Madame told me about the telegram. I won't be long, Marie. A week. 10 days at most. When? Tomorrow, before you wake. Am I to stay here? With Madame and Etienne. 10 days, Papa? At most. Have we ever spent a night apart? No. Can I go out while you are gone, Papa? Once I get back, I promise. Rue de Cordier, Rue Jacques Cartier, Rue Valborel. You'll know them all in a week. 10 days. At most. Okay, so let's take this line by line. Use as much soap as you like, he says. I bought extra. This is not just information. We're in a time of scarcity and rationing, and to say this to her means this is a special occasion. You're leaving, aren't you? Madame told me about the telegram. Again, this is not just information. Consider the other ways she could have asked him this. So, off to Paris? So do you think it's really smart to go to Paris right now? Papa, are you going somewhere? The way she says this is perfectly crafted by Doerr because her actual line exacerbates his guilt. Aren't you? And also shows that she feels this is a loss. She says it in a pretty dramatic way. You're leaving. I won't be long, Marie. A week. 10 days at most. This informs her, but it's also meant to console her, so it's doing more than one thing. When? Look at the brevity of this question. Even this one-word line of dialogue is about more than just information. It's not just a matter of her wanting to know when he's leaving. There's a tinge of passive aggressiveness to it. Even with this single word, we get a sense that she does not want this. Tomorrow, before you wake. Now, Doerr could have had the Papa just say tomorrow, but he adds before you wake, which means this is goodbye. Am I to stay here? Obviously she's going to stay here. This isn't a question. This is her tugging at his heartstrings. With Madame and Etienne. And this isn't just information, it's consolation. The subtext, you'll be safe, you're in good hands. 10 days, Papa? The subtext, that's a long time for us to be apart. Are you sure you want to do this? I could go on, but you get the idea, yes? Subtextual desire is really key, and the fact that they're at odds means there's a misalignment here. They're misaligned in terms of what they want, and so that's what we're going for. Next, let's look at the other ways in which we are aware of the character's desires here. This scene is relayed via Papa's point of view. We get his perspective and his interiority. After he buys the ticket, we get a sense of his thoughts when the narrator says, He will go do this, and then it will be over. Back to work. Staff the key-pound, lock things away. In a week, he will ride unbridled back to Brittany and collect Marie-Laure. No italics, no first person. It is not narrated like this. I will go do this, and then it will be over. Note, too, that there's no mental action verb like, he will go do this, he thinks, and then it will be over. The narration just goes in close to the character's mind. So it's very fluid incorporation of character interiority. Now, you can occasionally include a mental action verb. That's not a finable offense, but it's often unnecessary. The italicized switch to first person thing is finable, though. I will charge you if you do that. Once they're in the bathroom and she's running her hands through the suds, we depart from the external action of the scene to get some more of his interiority. There has always been a sliver of panic in him, deeply buried, when it comes to his daughter. A fear that he is no good as a father, that he is doing everything wrong, that he never quite understood the rules. All those Parisian mothers pushing buggies through the Jardin des Plantes, or holding up cardigans in department stores, it seemed to him that those women nodded to each other as they passed, as though each possessed some secret knowledge that he did not. How do you ever know for certain that you are doing the right thing? See that last question there? It brings everything back to the current scene, right? He's not sure he's doing the right thing by leaving Marie-Laure and going back to Paris. He fears he's abandoning her. And on the eve of this abandonment, he dwells on his having raised her. It's a totally authentic place to have a brief flash of the past and his raising her as a single father. But, importantly, it's all relevant to the desire and tension in the current scene. Any digression to the past or future needs to be relevant to the present time story. And then we get some more interiority. There is pride too, though. Pride that he has done it alone. That his daughter is so curious, so resilient. There is the humility of being a father to someone so powerful, as if he were only a narrow conduit for another greater thing. That's how he feels right now, he thinks, kneeling beside her, rinsing her hair, as though his love for his daughter will outstrip the limits of his body. The walls could fall away, even the whole city, and the brightness of that feeling would not wane. Now, this is a beautiful articulation of a father's love for his daughter, but Dorr does something quite clever in the end here. The walls could fall away, even the whole city, and the brightness of that feeling would not wane. This novel starts with San Malo being bombed. We don't know the fate of Marie-Laure or her papa, but we do know that this city is going to be bombed and the walls are going to fall away. So even in the midst of this declaration of love, Dorr gives us a little tension. We're thinking, oh my God, he's going to leave her here and this city's going to be bombed. So try to work some tension into your interiority. So much of the interiority in this scene gives us a sense of impending loss, and that loss creates tension. After she says, "You're leaving, aren't you?" we get this. He is glad just now that she cannot see him. Because, we surmise, he is crying. Loss, conflict, tension. And by the way, when we're allowed to guess at or intuit the emotions of the scene, it will be way more powerful. Later, she leans over her knees. Her back is long and white and split by the knobs of her vertebrae. She used to fall asleep, holding his index finger in her fist. She used to sprawl with her books beneath the key-pound bench and move her hands like spiders across the pages. She used to suggests his reminiscing, but there's also something very funereal about that phrasing. So again, this interiority gets us anticipating loss, and it makes the scene more poignant. This is their goodbye scene, and we're starting to realize that there's a possibility here that this is their final goodbye, which means there's a lot at stake. Now, there's not a lot of stated explicit interiority through the rest of this scene, but there's a fair amount of implied interiority through the actions, through the objects, and through the setting. First of all, the actions. The whole backdrop of this conversation is the father bathing his daughter. It's a very intimate thing, especially since she's not a young child anymore. He washes her hair, he rinses it, he hands her a towel, he leads her up to her bedroom, he brushes her hair. A blind girl can do all of this herself, but Dorr positions this whole dialogue within the context of this nighttime bathing routine and allows him to have the father reminiscing on raising her, and it gives us this wonderful mixture of her power and her vulnerability, perhaps most embodied in this line. Then he walks her up to the 6th floor and into their little room, though he knows she does not need to be guided. The actions in the scene are showing us a lot about the relationship between the two characters and the concerns of the prospective character. Next, objects. Use as much soap as you like, he says. I bought extra. We've already talked about soap, so I won't say any more about it, and a lot of these others are pretty self-explanatory. The train ticket remains folded in his pocket, like a betrayal. The stone in his pocket seems almost to pulse. These things are on his mind, and they're relevant to his mission, his desire. As tenderly as he can, he draws the brush through the damp strands of his daughter's hair. This speaks to his intimacy with her and his not wanting to hurt her. Wanting being a key word there. Desire. Marie-Laure's fingers rove the outer ramparts, the sea beyond. This is the only one that may need some explanation for those who haven't read the novel. Papa has made Marie-Laure a small wooden model of the city that basically serves as a map for his blind daughter. And so she runs her fingers over this model. Here, she's running her fingers outside of the city to places she can't go, which shows us something about her interiority, right? Even though we're not in her head here, we still get a sense of what's on her mind. Her papa's departure, the fact that she can't go with him, and whether he's coming back. The bottom line, objects can do a lot to convey character interiority. As can setting. Most of this scene takes place in the third floor bathroom, where Papa engages in an intimate but respectfully proper bathing of his daughter. He fills the big iron tub and turns his back as she undresses. We've already talked about the actions of the bathing, but consider how this setting reinforces that intimacy and that parental dilemma that Papa faces. It's an enclosed space. And did you notice that the bathroom he takes her to is on the third floor and her bedroom is up on the sixth? This is an enormous house, and yet they're in close proximity all the time. It's a reflection of the larger context. This is World War II, but we're focused on the lives of this very small private family. And it's a reflection of the scene level situation. They've never been apart for a night, and now he's leaving her. The setting is very fitting for the scene's desire and conflict. Later, we get this short sentence drawing attention to the setting. The drain moans, the cluttered house crowds in close. This adds a pinch of tension, right? The verb moans and the crowding in, those are subtle suggestions of trouble. But this line occurs right after Papa's thoughts about being an inadequate but also proud father, and right before Marie-Laure says, "You're leaving, aren't you?" The setting is a transition relevant to both his state of mind and to the state of affairs here. The walls creak. The window between the curtains is black. The town prepares to sleep. Somewhere out there, German U-boats glide above underwater canyons and 30-foot squid ferry their huge eyes through the cold dark. Again, the setting provides threat, trouble. But there's even more going on with this one. As we saw, she later runs her fingers across the sea beyond, and that precious gem in his pocket is called the Sea of Flames. And the book she was reading in his memory of her was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But you don't need to know any of that, really. You just need to know that somewhere out there, there is threat. And Papa is about to go toward it, away from Marie-Laure. Okay, so there's a quick rundown of some of the things the scene is doing very well. It's got masterful interiority, excellent use of the past, clear but complex subtext, and its use of objects and setting is almost perfect. There's nothing wasted in this scene, no part of it that seems gratuitous, no information that is beside the point, no gesture that is just there for a rhythmic pause. It's an extremely tight and extremely powerful scene, and if you read it in context or reread it after having read the whole novel, it's even more moving. So here's a list for you to consider. Number 1, dialogue should ideally contain subtextual desire and misalignment. Character interiority should be fluidly incorporated. Any digression to the past or future needs to be relevant to the present time story. Interiority can/should have some tension within it. It's often most powerful when we're allowed to guess at or intuit the emotions of the scene. The actions in the scene can reveal both the relationship between the characters and the concerns of the prospective character. Objects can do a lot to convey character interiority. Setting should fit with the scene's desire and conflict. And setting can provide threat and trouble. All right, if you have questions about any of this stuff, write them down and we can talk about them in class. Or if they're really pressing, email me and we can talk about them. And I look forward to working with you in a few days.